Good evening, everybody. As the gentleman just said, my name is David McCallum from Brooklyn, New York. But before I continue, I want to personally thank WinWare and AIDWYC for inviting me here today. Thank you. Normally, when I talk about Rubin, I can often smile because I recall the first time that I saw Rubin, he was smiling from ear to ear. I had the honor to meet him for the very first time in a prison visiting room. And he was smiling so much at me that I felt very, very uncomfortable with that because I was thinking to myself, is something wrong with me? I was really questioning myself at that particular moment. But later on, as I got to know Rubin a little bit more, I come to find out that Rubin is actually a funny guy. Rubin would often make me laugh and just sort of keep things simple with me because I was a nervous wreck when I first had the opportunity to meet him. And then it got serious, of course. But it didn't get serious about my particular wrongful conviction. Rubin wanted to know about who I was and what I was doing and how was I spending my time while I was incarcerated. So as I began to talk to Rubin about some of the things that I was doing inside, he felt pretty comfortable with that. But I sensed that there was some trepidation as well. I didn't take offense to it because I couldn't understand why someone like Rubin would be so, leery about someone like me crying out and reaching out to him for help when he didn't really know who I was. But Rubin and I developed a really, really good relationship over the number of years, and I can honestly tell you that I did everything I could to earn his trust. That was the most important thing to me. Then we started getting into my case. Rubin and I cases parallel in so many different ways. And it's sort of one of those 6 degrees of separation moments where, there's so many parallels in our cases that we begin to sort of question the spirituality of ourselves at times because our cases were so similar. But for me, I know for a fact that I certainly wouldn't be standing here if not for this man stepping out and giving up part of his life for me. So for me to repay him while I was still incarcerated was to make sure I focused on what was important. And that's, to me, was improving myself as a person. Rubin wanted that. And Rubin promised me that he would get me out of prison. So in return, he said, look, Mr. Callum, he said, look, I want you to when you get out, I want you to live a pristine life. And I knew exactly what Rubin meant by that. Rubin meant that when I get out, to not embarrass him, my family, or anyone who believed in me and who believed in my innocence. That was the easy part as far as I was concerned, because there was no way in the world that I was going to do anything to wind up in a place like prison, because I felt like I didn't belong there in the first place. So that part was easy. The difficult part for me was trying to get the help that I desperately needed. You see, my state and federal appeals were exhausted in 1993, which means that I had no other recourse other than to cry out for help. So, no exaggeration, I wrote about 600 or so letters to anyone who I thought would listen. I wrote the New York Daily News, I wrote the New York Post, the New York Times, you name it, radio stations. Sometimes I wrote these places once, twice, 3, and sometimes 4 times because in my mind, I didn't want to accept no for an answer. And I wasn't going to accept no for an answer because my very life depended on it. So in 2004, I wrote a letter I read an interview with The Sun magazine. It's a literary magazine in the States where you can write short stories and those sorts of things. And at that particular time, I was working in the prison law library at Eastern Correctional Facility. So my friend Earl Coleman was reading this magazine. And because I was bored that night for some reason, didn't have much work to do on that particular night, I just decided to ask my friend Earl, can I read your magazine? I had no real intentions of reading any article in the magazine. I just simply wanted to peruse it. Okay? So he let me peruse the magazine, and I came across an interview with Ken Klonsky and Dr. Carter, who he later became to be known as. And so the interview captivated me because I knew who Rubin was. I knew he was a former prize fighter and that sort of thing. And I knew he was wrongfully convicted. He had spent time in prison and those sorts of things. But I didn't know who Ken Klonsky was. So I read the article. I took it back to my cell that particular night, and I read the article. And after reading the article, I decided to write the Sun magazine. And so I wrote the Sun magazine, and they wrote me back and said, Mr. McCallum, we cannot give you any personal information of Rubin Carter because we would need his permission first. So I wrote them back and I said, look, I understand that, please. If you can forward my letter to Mr. Carter, I would appreciate that. And if not, that's fine. So what the Sun magazine did was they forwarded the letter to Ken Klonsky. Ken Klonsky wrote me back maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks later and said, Mr. McCallum, your letter really touched me. He said, what I can do for you, although I can't promise you anything, but what he said to me was, I can promise you that I will do anything I can to help you. But it's also up to Rubin in terms of whether Rubin wants to help you or not. And so I wrote Mr. Klonsky back and I said, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Anything you can do, I would appreciate it. If not, I appreciate it nevertheless. Ken wrote me back and said, David, guess what? Mr. Carter's going to write you a letter. And from that very moment, after I got that in the mail, I cried like a baby. Because for me, there were no guarantees that Mr. Carter was going to help me. But the fact that someone would listen for the very first time in over a decade, that was more than enough for me to appreciate anything that anyone had to offer with respect to my case. I just wanted somebody to hear me. Although there was not a death penalty in New York State at the time, I felt like I was on death row, without actually being on death row, obviously. And so when Mr. Carter volunteered his services, that really changed my life. I would like to say that my life changed in 2004 when that moment happened. And of course, when you're dealing with the legal system, of course, a lot of you individuals know this, it's very hard, it's very difficult, and it's time consuming. In New York State, much like here in Ontario, there's not much difference, I don't think. It was a long fought battle. But Rubin, ever the optimist, ever the realist, said to me, look, David, this is going to be a fight, but we're going to get you out. But unfortunately, Rubin started to get sick. And one of the very last things he did on behalf of me, and I would like to say my family, is he penned a letter to the New York Daily News. And in this letter, Rubin asked the Brooklyn District Attorney, the new Brooklyn District Attorney, Ken Thompson, would he take an honest look at the case? Because that's all we ever asked, is to have someone take an honest look at our case. We didn't want any gifts, although I think I would have accepted it, but we didn't want any. And I think the Brooklyn District Attorney must have heard him, because they agreed to look at our case thoroughly and fairly, which is all we ever asked. And as a result, on October 15th, 2014, myself, along with Willie Stuckey, my co-accused, who unfortunately and tragically passed away in prison on December 3rd, 2001, from a heart attack, were exonerated by the Brooklyn District Attorney. And, yeah. Thank you. And that would never happen if not for Rubin stepping out and sacrificing parts of his life for us. But of course, in knowing Rubin and getting to know Rubin better, I also learned a whole lot about John Artis. You see, I had a co-accused too, and of course, so did Rubin, and his name is John Artis. So during one of my trips here to Toronto, I had an opportunity to meet John on a more personal level. John, too, like Rubin, very funny guy. And you always have these visions about individuals. This guy's so serious all the time. What would he be like? When I first met John, he was much like Rubin in a way. And so I immediately felt comfortable with him. And so, again, when I was invited here to present an award on behalf of Rubin by WinWare and AIDWYC, that was an opportunity I just couldn't pass up. Because one of the things that I wanted to do more than anything in the world was to pay it forward. And by paying it forward, that means doing the right thing. And for me, with all due respect, I work for the Manhattan Legal Aid Society. I work with the support staff there. But a lot of those things would never happen, especially that, if not for the help of Rubin. That's how much he impacted the case in so many different ways. His name of recognition, of course. But the guy was really knowledgeable about wrongful convictions. And he understood that they do happen, and they will continue to happen if we, as a legal community, don't step up and just listen to the cries of others who are probably still in prison to this very day, doing the same things that I was doing, writing letters, begging practically for help. So it is my honor to present the Tracy Tyler Award to Rubin Hurricane Carter, and I will humbly ask Mr. John Artist to come up and accept this award on behalf of Rubin.
Okay. How about that? Out here?
Right here.
Okay. That it? I guess so. Okay, cool. Thanks, David. Wow, I've gotten a lot of awards in my day as a track star and all that kind of good stuff. But I'm honored to get this. That's been named and dedicated to my best and closest friend, Rubin Hurricane Carter. I didn't know Rubin 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever it is. But when we got put in a situation where, as a 19-year-old, the authorities asked me or told me, just say that it was Rubin Carter and we'll let you go. We'll let you go. Just say it was him. And even after taking a lie detector test, I had a New Jersey state trooper say, if I find any indication that you had anything to do with these murders, I'm going to do my utmost to see that you get the electric chair. Well, not a great thing to hear at 19 when I had goals and dreams of going to college and hopefully trying to participate in the Olympics and see if I had world-class speed and if I was a qualified athlete of world class. And I definitely didn't want to die. And on October the 14th, it's ironic that David was released on October the 15th. I was arrested on October the 14th. My 20th birthday present was 3 counts of murder and 1 count of atrocious assault and battery with intent to kill, and the state was going to seek the death penalty. Fortunately, God blessed me, and with God's mercy, we didn't get killed. But I never acquiesced to what the state wanted me to do and name an innocent person as a murderer and convict myself as well. If I'd have been really stupid, I could have done that. Or if as naive as I wasn't that naive. I may be crazy, right? But I'm not stupid. So if I'd have done that, I not only would have killed Rubin, but I would have killed myself as well. And I'm really proud of this today. Rubin died a year ago. And I was sitting at bedside with him when he took his last breath. I left my job, I quit my job. I quit. I took a leave of absence and I haven't been back since. Money's tight. And I came up here to be with Rubin because we had walked this this long road, this tough road together. And when he died, he left a whole lot of orders in his will for things that he wanted me to do that had to be done, and etc. And I'm still doing that to keep Rubin's legacy alive. And AIDWYC is something that Rubin was committed and dedicated and involved with, and so I decided and knew that I also had to do the same. And AIDWYC has named me as their ambassador, and I'm proud to go out and speak for AIDWYC. And I'll tell everybody, where you from, AIDWYC? AIDWYC. Which brings us to today, and this is a glorious day. This is a glorious day. There are a lot of people who have done a lot of things relative to wrongful conviction, and AIDWYC decided, hey, it's not just enough to do it locally, but we want the world to recognize Wrongful Conviction Day. And today, Wrongful Conviction Day is an internationally shared event, not just here in Toronto, not just here in Canada. As a matter of fact, Barry Scheck sent me one of his emails, Wrongful Conviction Day, here in New York. That's all right, Barry, I hear you. Innocence Project. We got our own thing going on here in Canada, but that's great. But most of you attended the presentation that was downstairs, and you heard a lot of stuff. And you've heard this term 3 times. You heard it here 2 times. And this is the time for you, where the rubber meets the road. Freedom is not free. And in case you didn't hear me, I'm going to tell you again. Freedom is not free. We were fortunate, Rubin and I, that he happened to be an international professional boxer, that he was able to appeal to the Hollywood personalities and professional athletes. He was able to do that. Then he wrote a book called The 16th Round, which I have a few copies of, and appealed also to the public, because we had nowhere else to go after all of our remedies of appeal and such were exhausted. Those of us who have been there know what that means. That's the end of the line if you can't get somebody to help you or some assistance and such. And the trauma that a wrongfully convicted person and their family has to go through is debilitating. And it's a stamp that you get that you never get rid of. It's a ball and chain. Most people don't look at me and say, well, that's John Artis, the guy that was a track star in high school. No, I'm John Artis, who was the co-accused of Rubin, who went to prison for 15 years. Nothing anywhere near what David did or anywhere near what Romeo did. 30 years, 32 years, Romeo. I don't know how he did that. And I don't know. David got locked up when he was 16, and he did 29 years. And I don't know how he did that. I know it was difficult. It was difficult for me to do 15 years. I know my 15 years, by heart. 5,478 days, 180 months, 780 weeks. I know that bad boy by heart. And I'll never forget being 45,473 after walking out of an institution. But freedom is not free. Rubin was able to get Bob Dylan to make a song and make a hit out of it and send the contributions to our defense fund. Muhammad Ali was able to get involved and create funds and send to our defense fund. A lot of celebrities like Stevie Wonder and Gladys Knight and all them put on concerts and stuff in New York City's Madison Square Garden and the Houston Astrodome to raise money to send to our defense fund. Even the NAACP raised money and sent to our defense fund, because freedom is not free. You have to hire investigators. You have to have experts in ballistics and DNA, and you have to submit petitions, and you have to submit briefs and all kinds of materials that costs money. Freedom is not free at all. Then you have, like Dave said, you got to find an attorney who first listens to you, then believes you, then wants to get interested in your case, and then he's going to shoulder the responsibility of representing you pro bono. All of you lawyers know what pro bono means. Very few people do anything for free, but lawyers do. Fortunately, we had 5 law firms and 2 law schools. 5 law firms. Not Jim Locklear and AIDWYC. There was no such thing as an Innocence Project. We had 5 law firms and 2 law schools. Many of the people I'd never met and never had the opportunity to thank them. Haven't. You know, and these kinds of events, it's nice to get to meet you, and we sit down and we agree, and we talk, we sip a little wine, we drink a little beer, we say how you doing, and so forth and so on. But generally when the conversation of money comes up, all of a sudden everybody gets interested in their phone, what time it is, where they're going to go for dinner, the attractive lady that's sitting over there, or the attractive gentleman who's standing in the corner. When you say money, my father used to say some people are so penurious that they squeak when they walk. That if they owned a lumber yard, they wouldn't give a crippled crab a crutch. But I'm saying to you, I'm saying to you, all of you in this room, we didn't get here because the government gave us money. The government is the adversary. The government doesn't give money to their adversaries. You know anybody in war who supplies money to their enemy? Somebody who's challenging them, who's fighting against them? If you know one, let me know. I'm going to ask them for a loan. They don't do that. The only people that make it possible for AIDWYC to exist are people like you in this room. These people, the volunteers, little Alice back there, and Amanda, and Jim, and all the lawyers and stuff, they are committed, they believe, and they're dedicated. They ask for nothing in return. The only reward that they want is to see all of us from behind the wall out here in society. That's what they want to see. That's their reward. No money. No money. They give what they have. And I'm asking you, give what you have. I know some of you out here got your checkbook with you. I know that. I know some of you got credit cards, debit cards, fat wallets, this stuff in your pocket. You know, change. You got a loonie and a tootie. Yeah, that's $1. And $2. I'm asking you, before you leave here tonight, give to AIDWYC. Give. Because if people stop, like you, stop giving to AIDWYC, AIDWYC is going to cease to exist. And that's no joke. That's a fact, Jack. So if you walk out of here tonight and don't give something to AIDWYC, there's some terms that we have in the institution, but I won't use them here, about penurious folk. But it's absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary. All of the money that they receive today goes to the Romeos and the Morins and such. That's where the money goes. They don't get it. It doesn't go in their pocket. I would be so bold as to say right now, who'll give me $1,000? See? Who'll give me $1,000? Some of you got it, I know it. Who'll give me $1,000? Quiet as a church mouse. But I'm saying give. Give is essential. This is the rubber hitting the road. This is the rubber hitting the road. Won't be any more of these kind of gatherings if AIDWYC doesn't get enough money to get through the next year. They have a fund going right now, and they're trying to reach a very modest goal of roughly $150,000 so that they can do a little bit more. But if they don't get it, guys like us, who are still behind walls in Canada, won't get any assistance. There is nobody here in Canada except AIDWYC. Nobody. No other organization in Canada. They're all over the United States, but not here in Canada. There's just AIDWYC, the Association in Defense of the Wrongfully Convicted. They're the only ones that give us a voice. And the only way they can keep giving us a voice is that you have to help us. And if you don't help us, c'est la vie. C'est la vie. And I'm very, very grateful for this award.
Thank you, John and David. Thank you very much.